Most people know Jim Root as the guitarist for Slipknot, one of the most influential metal bands of all time. But beyond the music, Jim is also a lifelong motorcycle enthusiast, someone who has found freedom, creativity, and inspiration on two wheels. With a busy life of writing, recording, and relentless touring, motorcycles have become a place where Jim can slow down, be present, and reconnect with himself. They're more than just a hobby. They're a source of perspective, balance, and creative fuel. In this conversation, we explore the parallels between music and motorcycles, the creative process, finding inspiration, and what it takes to stay passionate about your craft for decades. I hope you enjoy my conversation with the legendary Jim Root. Now let's dive in. Welcome to Ride Beyond, where we go beyond the ride and into what matters. In this podcast, you'll find meaningful conversations with people who live with passion, chase freedom, and remind us what it means to live fully. The motorcycle is our connection, but the stories are what take us beyond. Most people know you from the stage persona as like this mysterious man behind a mask in one of the biggest metal bands in the world. How would you describe Jim Root behind the scenes?
Extremely boring. I mean, different. It depends. There's different eras,
Mm-hmm.
When we first started, I was 27 when we started touring. And at that time, I had a pretty rad, steady girlfriend, and I had given up on the music thing. Didn't think it was going to happen. So I was just working 9 to 5 and living that life, doing the band thing still, but, kind of just giving up on the thought of like, it's going to happen. But at that time in my life, I was still going out to bars, drinking, going out and seeing bands, drinking, partying, doing whatever, and then that spilled over into our touring. Because when we started touring, it was kind of like, oh shit, it's happening. Like we're doing this, you know what I mean? So it was kind of like, woohoo, let's go. It's on, you know what I mean? And
It's that excitement when you're a new band starting out, hitting the road for the first time, and you're going to like live the rock star life.
Yeah. And it's a learning curve, and you're hungry, and you're wanting to just completely decimate and destroy and rule the world with it. And you're not trying to like, I don't know. You're not trying to like really like we were out to kill everyone. We didn't want, we were going to be the band, you're not going to put us in this category or that category, which of course happens. You always get genrefied or whatever it is. But, at that time I was a little bit of a loose cannon, kind of wild. You know what I mean? I'm an only child. I'm Libra. So, I just kind of felt like I could do what I want when I want, and it's my business, not any of your business. So, which is somewhat toxic and a little bit self-destructive.
I think it's natural to be rebellious as a young adult.
You have to kind of that, and just the type of music that I was always drawn to, like, like speed metal and thrash metal and like just metal in general. I didn't really get too deep into the punk scene because I always felt, even back in the 80s and 90s, I always felt like it was kind of elite. You know what I mean? Like kind of cliquey and elitist. Where they claim that they're all inclusive and all that shit. But whenever I hung out with like people from that scene, it kind of seemed like they were looking down their nose at me because I was like a speed metal dude or whatever. It's like, oh, you know how to play your instrument well, that we're not into that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Type of thing. But, that could also be me generalizing as well. That was just a few circumstances that I found myself in. In the Midwest, it was probably different in other places. I've seen stories of, all the punk bands from the West Coast. They were all sharing gigs and vanning back around each other. And it was like,
but that's because they were in the same club.
Yeah, pretty well. Yeah, that's true. But our scene was very similar. We were trading shows. It was local, and Des Moines had a huge scene for it being Des Moines, Iowa in like the late 80s, early 90s. There was a lot of bands, and looking back, like within the last year, I look back at some of the bands, like these bands like Junk Poet, and I can't even remember the names of most of them right off the top of my head right now, but there was a massive scene, Joey from Modifidius. I was in Atomic Opera. Clown was Heads on the Wall. Paul was Vex, there was so much going on, and it was printing flyers. It almost felt like to me like a miniature scene of, kind of like the Hollywood scene from the decadent Hollywood, like hairband days. But we were renting out clubs. We were like getting Sunday shows where we could do all age shows at clubs and getting wristbands for people that could drink. And, if you didn't have a wristband, you were underage. We were selling merch. We were printing merch. We were trying to save money for recording. And it was wild. I mean, we were filling up 1,200 seat clubs, just around Des Moines. It was a thing. And it kind of seems like after we took off, got the go ahead, got the record deal, got the rolling papers to get on a bus, Ozfest 99's getting ready to happen. Shortly after that, it seems like it kind of fell apart. And then we were so inwardly focused on doing what we were doing because we were sacrificing, we were all living on the same bus. We were all sharing hotel rooms. If we got hotel rooms, like sometimes we would have to take the driver of the bus's hotel room for all of us to shower in. We were making $20, I can't remember if it was a week or a day of per diem, and that was it. There was no income. I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together.
It's the story of a startup band, man.
But we were hungry and we were ready to go and kill, and the world has changed so much since then. I don't know if anybody will ever really experience that in that way anymore, which is kind of a shame because it's an educational experience,
You guys had to grow the old school way.
Yeah.
And you came from this like unassuming town. Yeah. But what's crazy as you're describing Des Moines, like you grew up in Iowa and like Des Moines, you never think of that as this like music hub or this cultural hub or this creative place, but it really was, I guess, at least at the time that you were coming up.
I'm sure it's still creative, just in different ways. It's probably more expansive now. There's probably a lot more like folk kind of stuff. There's probably a lot more like coffee bar kind of stuff going on. I don't know if there's like any kind of like hard rock or metal scene or bands like that coming out, but Iowa, it's where I grew up. It's not where I was born. It's where I was, shaped as a human.
What was your upbringing like there?
Just, Dad was a factory worker, Firestone. He cured tires at Firestone, tractor tires on a C shift at night. Mom ended up getting a job at the post office, working 3 to 11. I was a latchkey kid, so I was kind of like raising myself while they were trying to put ends together, make ends meet.
It's like a typical Midwest family, man.
Yeah, like lower middle class, I mean, I didn't want for anything, but at the same time, I didn't have a lot of the things that a lot of the other guys around me had. I went to Ankeny High School, and, at that time, there was a bit of money there, so you'd have dudes that, daddy'd get them the 69 SS Camaro and, shit like that. And, I had money my grandparents had saved up in treasury bonds, like $1,100 for me to go to college. Well, that was out of the question because 1, I'm completely retarded and bad at school. And 2, there's no chance, unless I got some kind of scholarship, which was never going to happen. So I took that $1,100 and I bought a 72 Plymouth Cuda that was nothing but trouble. But you know what I mean? So like, I didn't really want for anything, but I wasn't like spoiled, I guess you could say. It was tough. You had to work for it. But I think that's part of what shaped the work ethic, the drive, the feeling of wanting to kind of get out.
It was never handed to you.
No, it's been work 14 years old, 15 years old, loading cabinets into cars and, staying after the clubs closed and, doing it all like self-management and, carrying gear, changing your own strings. If you could afford to buy new strings, trading in this guitar to get that guitar, it's, but if that's, and I one track mind when it comes to that kind of stuff. At that time I was, 16, 17, being an atomic opera, I was like, we are going to make it. By the time I'm 18, we're going to have a record deal. That was the big thing, at the time. It was like, and that doesn't guarantee anything. Just because you get a record deal doesn't mean you're going to make it, so to speak. That's shit. Only 1% of bands, if even that, probably nowadays actually make it. And now the world's so spread out with social media and so many different avenues and everybody being able to self-produce at home. there's no real sense of community anymore in any music scene. I don't feel like, you know what I mean? Because of this like whole influencer craze that's going on. And I think that's sad. And I think it's like, I think people need people not just for support, but also for constructive criticism. And that's how you improve. And that's how you collaborate. And that's how great things come up. And I'm probably missing something, man. All this stuff that I'm saying might exist out there. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. It's not just like right in your face like it was when we were coming up, you know?
When you were coming up, I guess even before you got into music, like what kind of kid were you? Were you the kid that was getting into trouble and detention? Were you kind of quiet, keeping to yourself?
I was very quiet. My mom said that I never cried. I never had any outbursts. I was just a real quiet kid. And I kind of still am. Like, I'm still more of a like, sit back and watch and just kind of like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I have my knee jerk freak outs where I freak out before I like process things and let them sink in to see what the actual meaning of things are. But, growing up, I was very introverted, didn't really fit into any like scene, like in school, kind of hung out by myself. I lived in a very rural area. I was like outside of Ankeny and outside of Des Moines, kind of by Saylorville Lake. So I couldn't go into Ankeny and hang out with like all my school friends. Didn't know anybody from Des Moines because I had moved away from Des Moines when I was like 10 years old. So it was just like whoever was in the neighborhood, like Mike Haley across the street and Kurt Logue and Brad and Evan Morris down the street. That was like my clique. And Brad and Evan were kind of like the bullies. They would always get me in trouble. They were like the bad influence that, if one of them got caught shoplifting at the grocery store, they'd say they were me, and the cops would call my house and my dad would be like, that ain't my son. He's sitting right here on the couch type of thing. And, I always tried to avoid trouble. I never got in trouble in school. Like I did every once in a while, but I wasn't getting like expelled. I wasn't getting like in school detention or anything like that. I tried to like fly under the radar as much as possible. Ironically, giving what it is that I do for a living, I really don't like attention. You know what I mean? So, I was kind of like just under the radar, chill, mellow kind of guy. Yeah, but I also have another side of me that's, sometimes I can be a little bit over the top and a little over, I don't know, like a little intense sometimes,
Well, if it's all bottled up, eventually it's got to come out.
Yeah, it's got to come out somewhere. So.
How did you first discover your like love for music?
Before I can even remember what I knew what it was.
Really?
Yeah. Like I said, before we moved to Ankeny, we lived on the north side of Des Moines, and, this is like mid 70s. I was born in 71. So 77, I got to see Star Wars, the original Star Wars, in the theater as it was released before anybody knew anything about what any of that stuff was. And that had such a huge impact on me. I wanted to be Han Solo. I wanted a lightsaber. I wanted to be like Luke. I wanted to be a Jedi. And,
that's sick.
7, 8-year-old kid. So my grandpa helped me make like a lightsaber out of wood. And instead of using it as a lightsaber, it was a guitar.
Okay.
And my parents, my parents were like kind of ex hippies. They came from like that, that late 60s kind of peace, love generation. There was a lot of pot smoking going on at my house. There was a lot of weekend parties with all their group of friends, keggers, that kind of thing. And it was music. It was turntables. It was classic rock all the time. Everything from like Zeppelin, Bob Seger, like just any band at that time, even like Tubular Bells, Moth the Hoople. I mean, you name it. Like I have this huge record collection that I inherited from them. That it's just
that enabled you to start exploring.
Yeah. Like, so my cousins would, since my dad worked the C shift overnight and my mom worked the 3 to 11 shift, my cousins were babysitting me overnight. So my dad would come by. He had a Harley Sturgis, an 80 Sturgis that he'd come pick me up on to take me home so they'd get ready for school after he got off work, because he would ride his motorcycle to work. And where was I going with that?
Well, we were talking about your origins of like how you fell in love with music.
Oh, so as soon as I would get home, if it was like summer and I didn't have to go to school, I would put a Beatles record on and I would literally like lip sync and mimic and put on concerts like I'd open up the curtains to the backyard of the house, and literally I remember doing it like every day, you know, and whether that was like a Billy Squier record, you know, a Beatles record, a Zeppelin record, Utopia, like all these and it was a wide variety of music. They listened to so much, you know, different like kind of music. And I gravitate back to that music still. I think it's still some of the best written music to this day. And there's very few artists that take those chances and approach music that way. Like, I can't remember the dude's name from Tame Impala, but he's very musical in that way where he takes chances.
Yeah, they're good.
There is a lot of stuff out there like that. I'm not very good at finding it, but every once in a while, man, I'll run into something that I hear and I'm just like, this is very reminiscent of the music that I grew up listening to. And it has a lifespan and it has a longevity. And I feel like as long as it's soulful and it's honest and it's not for the sake of, you know, like getting views or going viral or whatever, I think it'll stand the test of time and it'll be forever, you know? And I do think there's room for artists like that today.
How did you get from listening to the Beatles to finding this interest in hardcore music, metal?
Guitar. I was driven to the guitar, drawn to it. The visual of a guitar before I even ever held one in my hands, like there was just something about it that was magnetic and it was undeniable. And I knew, you know, when I was using that lightsaber as a guitar and like standing on a picnic table, trying to like, you know, mimic, you know, whatever band, you know, Wings Over America or whatever my parents were listening to, it was guitar and metal music. Guitar driven. It's guitar oriented.
It's almost like when you started playing, then it's like you discovered the sound that you like just through your own self-expression.
Yep. And you know, I took some guitar lessons where I was basically taught how to tune the guitar, and then the dude would like just teach me whatever song I wanted to learn. And when you're 13 or 14, it's like, you know, the first Motley Crue record and, you know, shit like that, Twisted Sister and stuff, because Metallica hadn't really popped yet and I hadn't been exposed to what other musicians were doing. And I'm in the Midwest, and this is before the internet, you know, so shit that's happening on the coasts or even overseas in England, it doesn't hit you until long after it's probably even done.
Especially back then.
To do something. Yeah. Cause there's no internet. There's no instant like, hey, this is happening here. This is a scene that's being created. This is a scene that's, you know, this is a culture that's starting to happen.
And vice versa. Like if you guys have this little scene popping up in Des Moines, like people in California might not be aware of that.
No, or they might not care because they were kind of like, well, California, man, we make the scenes, you know, or New York especially, you know what I mean? The garage scene in New York and all that. And it's undeniable the music that came out of those places. Like, you know, like, come on, Blondie and the Ramones and, you know, the Talking Heads, all that kind of stuff. It's undeniably legendary artists that were incredibly artistic and incredibly good at what they do. I guess a lot of them are still doing it. And so, but yeah, it crept in, and metal music was a way for me to figure out how to dissect the guitar and learn how to play things. That's why I was drawn to bands like Anthrax and Overkill and Megadeth and, you know, like the big four, let's say, and then everything, you know, Slayer, Flotsam and Jetsam, all these kinds of bands, because it was all about the guitar, and the guitar seemed to me like it was the most intricate thing and it was the most upfront thing in these mixes. So of course, you know, having a little bit of an ego, it's like, well, I want to be that upfront, you know, I want to be out there doing that thing, you know what I mean? And drums, forget it. That's one, they're way too expensive. I'd never be able to get a drum set from my parents. I don't think I'd be able to get a paper route to get a drum set. And that's loud. You got to have a place to play a drum set to learn, you know what I mean? And my parents were very supportive, mom more so than dad. So I didn't have to really worry about that. But when the guitar thing came about and I knew that's what it was going to be, I begged and pleaded for years. And then, you know, Christmas happened, and the lower middle class spoiled only child that I was, I got, you know, a Charvel Model 1 Ferrari red maple fretboard, and it was off to the races for that. And I would spend, it's Des Moines, there's not a lot to do. You know what I mean? It's not like Southern California where you got weather, you got, surfing at the ocean, you got snowboarding and skiing and Big Bear and every, motocross and everything else in between, BMX and all that. It's Iowa. You've got
cold outside, man.
It's cold. You got 3 months of summer, and then the rest of it, it's like, so I would lock myself in my room and I would just listen to music and try to figure out what tuning it was in and learn songs.
So sounds like you had some guitar lessons, but I feel like your sound was probably a lot self-taught.
Very self-taught, very organic. And I can't wrap my brain around theory, man. I've had people try to explain it to me, and it doesn't resonate with me, and I don't really know. Sometimes maybe I overthink it, or maybe I'm just too dumb to get it. I don't know.
I think if you focus too much on the rules, like the art side of it maybe falls away a little bit.
It could sacrifice a little bit, because if you are technically proficient and you're proficient in theory, there might be a case. I mean, you can argue this both ways, and this is the Libra in me, because, you got to balance everything out, but there might be something that you could talk yourself out of doing because musically it doesn't make sense. Although on the flip side of that, if you don't know that exists and that's not supposed to be a real thing that you can do in music theoretically, then it's organic and it just happens. And, but I've heard arguments that knowing theory, knowing your fretboard, being proficient on it, knowing your modes, knowing, every note on the fretboard helps you get to that organic place to where you can just throw it out the window and jam. And, I got a lot of hobbies, so I was never able to give 100% to guitar all the time. Like I like motorcycles. I like skateboarding at the time. I was never good at it. But I had all these other things, and it's a little bit confusing. Like, well, what do I want to do today? Like, oh, well, I guess it's winter, so I'll be playing guitar. And guitar was what I was driven to, and I was also begging and pleading for like a CR80 at the time, you know what I mean? Or a YZ80.
Yeah.
Which never happened.
That was my first bike, dude.
Yeah. And they were wild. So, dude, Mikey Haley across the street had a CR80, and Kane Springer had a YZ80. And I'd ridden Mikey Haley's CR80, and it was chill. You know what I mean? Dude, I got on that YZ80, looped it immediately.
Yeah.
It was like a whole different animal. Like, I was like, this is wild. But I didn't get the motorcycle. I got the guitar, and I think, there's a reason for everything. And the reason is that's kind of what I was meant to do.
What did it feel like when you first started? Like, you clearly had a love for music since the beginning, since you really started listening.
If I can remember.
What did it feel like when you started being able to play?
It's very frustrating in the beginning, because it started out as me just mocking playing. You know what I mean? Like acting like I'm playing, lip syncing, as it were. And then once I started learning chord patterns and scale formations, and I was able to actually like learn a song. When you like learn something, or say you're just sitting around noodling, playing, and then you play a chord and you're like, wait a minute.
Sounded good.
That sounds just like this Tom Petty song that I've heard before. And then you work it out, and it's like something opens up, and it's like increasing in levels. Like if you're playing video games, like cracking a level, it's exactly what it feels like. It like opens up another level, and then you have another level to ascend to. And that's kind of what it feels like. And it's so rewarding once you like crack the code on something.
It's kind of endless.
That's the beauty. It's very endless. So that's the thing about guitar. Like you could be like an open chord, strummy, kind of folky guy that sings and does any kind of pattern, and anybody can learn how to play like that. And it's a very simple thing to get to. Or you can become a master, like, like these guys like Alex Young or Yngwie Malmsteen, where they really understand theory and they take it to the level that, Guthrie Govan, guys like this, that, Tim Henson or Henderson, guys that really know their instrument, are really proficient on it. And there's anywhere in between that you can go with it, and I have a problem with discipline. I don't like to sit down and woodshed and practice. And when I do have a phase where I like to do that, I'll sit up endlessly just running scales and different variations of scales. And I've found myself lately to be a little bit stagnant just because, it's been a while since I've cracked a code to the next level.
Well, the further along you get, the harder it is
The
to
harder
crack
it
that
gets.
next
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Just like leveling up in games, and I was talking to Patrick Sheridan from Fit for an Autopsy, and he was talking about, the cage theory. So I was trying to wrap my brain around that for a while because, him and Tim are really ripping guitar players. I'd like to be able to play with that like that when it comes to soloing. Cause when it comes to soloing now, I go off the top of my head and I go off a feel and I try to play for the song. But at some point I'd like to be able to get into the Marty Friedman world where I'm really proficient in combining arpeggios with blues, transitions and 3-note per string, neoclassical guitar work. Like at some point, hopefully I can like combine all those in a meaningful way, to leave an impact as a guitar player on that side of what it is that, we do right here.
If you've listened to the show for a while, you've probably heard me talk about Foreign Rider. What I really appreciate is the philosophy behind the brand, and the attention to detail is honestly kind of insane. Personally, I've been wearing the Supima t-shirt all summer. It's made from super soft, California-grown Supima cotton, and it uses a technique called flat lock stitching throughout for comfort and durability. And it's knit, dyed, and sewn in their hometown of Toronto. At first glance, you might think it's just a t-shirt, but when you wear it, you realize how much thought went into getting something so simple exactly right. That level of intention comes from the founder. He's been in the apparel industry for decades now, and he's one of the most authentic riders I've ever met. He literally rides every single day, no matter the weather. I don't know about you, but that's the kind of person I want making the products that I wear, and the type of authenticity that I want to align with. So if you're looking for some casual apparel that's built with real purpose, not flashy, not over-designed, just incredibly well made, check out Foreign Rider. I think you'll understand exactly what I mean the first time you put it on. My listeners can use code BEYOND at checkout for a special discount. That's code BYND at checkout at foreignrider.com. Well, dude, how lucky are you to find a passion doing something where there really is no limit? So like it's really like you can become great, but there really is no such thing as mastery. Like it's endless.
It is. It's like samurais, or samurai sword builders. You know what I mean? Like guys that forge these weapons that are, they're like they're beyond legendary. They're like almost like, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like mythical people that have just spent like almost like monks and meditation where they spend their life dedicated to this one craft and they become so good at it.
Transcend.
They're literally making magic, you know what I mean? And they transcend like, what average people can do. And, boy, that just sounds like a lot of work, a lot of dedication. And we live in an ADD world and I'm susceptible to it too. Like, I find myself wasting a lot of time when I could be more productive with my time. But next thing I know, I'm doom scrolling and 3 hours have passed. And I'm like, shit, I thought it was 15 minutes. And here I am looking at all this bullshit on the internet. That just doesn't mean anything,
Yeah. So as a quiet kid who kind of kept to himself growing up, when you mastered or, gained this ability to play guitar, did it feel like a new way to express yourself? Did it feel like you had a new version of your voice in ways that maybe even words wouldn't communicate?
100%. I was never able to sing, but a terrible singing voice. I can harmonize with Corey, and I used to harmonize with Corey and Stone Sour a bit. Writing lyrics, I'm absolutely terrible at it, but I think I might have been trying too hard. Like I want to get to a point too where maybe someday I can not help Corey. He doesn't need any help. He's one of the best lyricists on the planet. But when you step outside of like overthinking it and you're honest, going back to that honesty thing, and you're talking about a subject, whether it's in the form of poetry or short story, or literally like, listening to Paul McCartney talk about how I wrote the lyrics of this song from a third person point of view about this person doing this thing, then that kind of like was an epiphany where it's like, well, maybe I should take another crack at this and look at it in a different way. But the guitar was 1000% how I expressed, and that's how I sing, and that's how I communicate. And that's kind of, I'm a 6'6", really awkward, tall human being, kind of goofy looking and all that. And guitar was my shield against that. And it was sort of like my power, like my,
Like Star Wars, dude.
Yeah.
You became a Jedi.
Yeah. And that's one of those things, like becoming a ninja or a samurai. You're always working at it. You're always working at it. And if I live to be over 70 or 80, I'll still be working and learning and trying to move forward. I just saw today, I got a notification on on my email that Paul McCartney just put out a new record. That guy's been doing it his entire life. You know what I mean? And
he doesn't have to anymore.
He doesn't have to. And as I'm realizing now that this is what it is we do, that the five of us that are left in Slipknot that got on the bus in 1999 to do Ozfest, we're the only ones that know our experience. And there's been a lot of turmoil. There's been a lot of disagreements. There's been a lot of love. There's been a lot of just anything you can imagine. Like, I went from being only child to having 8 brothers overnight. And now we're mature enough, and we're to a point now to where we understand each other, and we know how to communicate with each other in such a better way. Like, I don't know, if we don't tour as much. I mean, we tour so damn much. We're always on the road. I live my life out of a suitcase, basically. Houses that I have are merely places for me to store my shit. You know what I mean? So I would like to get to a point, build a studio to where we could just be creative. Like this new album we're working on, that's what we're doing. We're just jamming, and Clown's arranging, and he's taking things that Eloy and I are playing, or me and Eloy and Foff are playing, or he's even sitting in on the jams, and we'll jam for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we might get 4 song ideas out of that. And then we just spend time arranging, and it's so organic and it's so real. It's almost frightening. Like, I've done interviews in the past where I've talked about how I've never, as long as I've been writing, and writing's a learning curve. You're always learning. There's no handbook. There's no writing music 101. Everybody does it differently. For the first time, I'm listening to some of these arrangements as they're growing, and this is the closest I've heard to the music that I can hear in my head that I can't get out that I've ever been. And it's exciting, and it's like breathing a new life into wanting to create. And that's really what I mean, if I had it my way, I'd have a studio behind my house, and I would spend every waking hour in that studio, only taking breaks to jump into a razor and rip through the desert to clear my head, to come back and work at music again. You know what I mean?
That's incredible, man, especially after multiple decades in this band that you're so enthusiastic about it still.
It's good. There's a new life with this stuff. And having Eloy helps, man. I mean, he's such a talented human being, and he eats like the samurai, the master. He has that quality. He lives, eats, and breathes his drums. We're playing shows. We just toured like 2 years straight. He's got a practice pad off, to the left behind his hi-hat. When we're in between songs and Corey's talking, he literally turns to the side, and he's doing exercises.
Can't stop.
He's just practicing, man, keeping limber, and he has very good discipline. He's very knowledgeable. He's very technical. But he also is very, like, he can lay back and get, experimental, like even like Phil Collins' Genesis experimental, and like, and his range of like influences is so infinite. I'll throw a drummer's name out, like Stuart Copeland or something like that, and he'll like, and he'll try to like hit that mode. And there's so many drummers that he is, looks up to that I'm not even aware of. So I'm learning shit from him too. So it's really good.
You were talking about the music scene coming up in Des Moines, and how all the members of Slipknot, you guys were you knew of each other through this scene because you were all in different bands. What was it like at that time? What was this scene like in this little town in the Midwest? Can you kind of describe that era?
It was, probably 20, 30 different bands, and we all kind of knew each other. Some of us knew each other better than others. A lot of bands would tour together more than other bands. Or not tour, but put on shows, like rent out the United Rubber Workers Union Hall and put on an all age show and stuff like that. But, um, it really got to a point where, you know, lost my train of thought again. Here we go.
These guys eventually formed what would become Slipknot.
Yeah.
And I heard a story that when they eventually asked you to join the band, you told them no.
Yeah. So we were all working at it. We were all doing it. And when Slipknot had joined and started being Slipknot, I was out. I had stopped. I got into drugs. I kind of had given up on playing guitar. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I was bitter, because I had passed 18 years old and didn't make it or whatever. And
were you still in a band at all? Or
no, I don't even think I think I had an amplifier still, but I didn't even have a guitar at the time. You know what I mean? So I was just working.
You gave up on the dream.
I gave up. I'd given up 100%. I was working at a screen printing place. It was seasonal, and I'd collect unemployment in the winter, or I'd bounce between there and Spain Electric and do not journeyman, but like apprentice, like shop boy / apprentice type, helper kind of stuff, just to make ends meet. My parents had just gotten divorced, so I moved in with my mom so she wouldn't be so low. And I was just kind of like, well, this is going to be it. You know what I mean? I'm just going to have to maybe something will come up. Maybe something will happen. Maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel. But I'd resigned myself to the fact that music was just going to be done. Luckily, I had some really good people in my life that convinced me to come out and jam with them. The Thompson brothers, went to high school with them. They were a couple of years older than me, but they were jamming with this guy, John Conlon, on the south side of Des Moines. And they were looking for a guitar player. And before this happened, Andy, one of the original members from Slipknot, had called me up and asked me to join Slipknot. And when that happened, I think Donnie Steele was the guitar player at the time. And, Joey was the drummer. And I think it was post Motifidius, which was a band he was in with Josh Brainerd. They were players, man. They were because we were all technical and we were writing technical stuff. We were in it. And I hadn't been playing for so long. I just didn't feel like my ability was good enough to join their band. So I didn't say no to them for any other reason than I just didn't feel like I was, ready for it. I didn't feel like I could play up to the potential that they needed as a guitar player. Self-defeating, maybe a little bit. So that's why I said no, but I did start jamming with, Matt Beeger, who was another local musician. It still plays to this day. Wade Thompson and John Conlon. And, we started this sort of weird funk rock experimental thing. And we called ourselves the Beat Truck Fatals. And we just threw together 10 or 12 songs and we just started gigging. And I realized it doesn't matter if I make it or not. I love this. This is, not just playing guitar, but playing with other people. There's something magical that happens when you get with a group of people and you just make sound. There's a resonance, there's a frequency.
And the whole room comes together
everything
as one.
And we're humans and we resonate at a frequency. And, you can get into this transdimensional shit that people talk about now and all that kind of stuff. But I do believe there's a lot of truth to that. And
that's why your music can connect with someone across the world.
Well, it's language, you know what I mean? And it moves people and it's emotion and it really can bring people together. And I understand why, music was that way when I was growing up. I'm part of the MTV generation. So what was being pushed at that time when they were actually showing music videos was inclusiveness. But it wasn't even a question. It wasn't even something that was acknowledged. You know what I mean? It was just we're making music. This is what we do. Nothing else matters. So nobody talked about race or gender or any of this other shit. People just came together and made music. It was United Colors of Benetton. And being raised by MTV, essentially, I realized there was something there that doesn't matter what level you do it at. It's a passion and it's a love and it's something that brings you joy. And there's not a lot of things in life that can do that. So for me, the Beat Truck Fatals made me realize that it doesn't matter if I get a record deal or if I get into a band that's signed and we become, the biggest thing in the world, or even just a mid-level band and we tour for 5 years, do 2 records, and then we're done. Any level, it's hard to do. And I have a lot of respect for bands that are out there doing it and still doing it at whatever level they're doing it at. This shit ain't easy.
So did Slipknot eventually ask you again, or did you eventually come to the realization like, oh my God, dude, this is actually a good opportunity for me?
No. So what ended up happening was I think Mick joined the band. I guess in some ways, maybe I would have been like the Mick part of the band at that time had I said yes. So I did the Beat Truck Fatals, excuse me. And that evolved into me joining Stone Sour. And, doing that, going back out, doing what Atomic Opera was doing, playing clubs, back in it again, doing it, like, okay, I love doing this. I love playing in front of people. I love creating music. Like, there's no reason why I should not be doing this. So,
so you were in Stone Sour before Slipknot.
Yeah. Joined Stone Sour, 94, 95. I can't remember exactly.
That probably gave you some confidence to be like, well, like
I got my chops back. I reignited my romance with the guitar. I started getting back into gear. I started actually playing again and realizing, this isn't worth giving up. This is a part of me. It's a part of what I am. And then, Stone Sour happened, and then Corey left to join Slipknot. And then me and Sean Economaki, the bass player at Dead Front, we went off and we kind of, my drummer from Atomic Opera had a band called Dead Front. So me and Sean went and we sort of infiltrated Dead Front and took that band over.
It's like musical chairs, man.
Kind of a little bit. And that's kind of that scene, how that scene was pretty incestuous. This guy going to that band and these guys firing that guy because they want this guy and that type of thing. But, Dead Front started like getting a name for itself. And, and then I've been talking to Aaron, our singer, a lot lately. At some point, we're going to do some of the Dead Front stuff and probably write some new music. This is why I'm working to build a studio so I can have these creative outlets to do that. But while I was in Dead Front, I was living with Aaron, the singer of Dead Front, and his wife, Monica, friends of mine from that whole time, still friends of mine to this day. Was living in their basement, and I got a phone call, and it was Joey and Clown and Ross Robinson, and Slipknot had gotten a record deal at this point, and we all knew it. We knew they were going off to do their thing.
Was that their debut record?
It was the self-titled that they were working on. Yeah. At that time. And that was the second call I got because Josh was leaving the band, and they wanted me still to come and be that guy. Like, Clown always tells me, he's like, it was always you. You were always destined to be a part of this. It was never a question. But I didn't feel like I wanted that part of the work handed to me. I feel like I need to put the work in. I don't want to jump into a record deal that's already happening. I want to go through the process. I want to do that work. I feel like it's part of the process. I felt that way at the time. I felt like I would be walking into something that I might not necessarily deserve.
Right. You didn't want to go tour across the globe playing music that you didn't really have a hand in creating at the time.
Yeah. And, later on I would become a much, much larger part in the creation of the creative process once I got closer to Joey and Paul and Nick and the rest of the guys in the band. But, not knowing what you're going into, we could do one album and one tour and it completely falls flat on its face and you never know what's going to happen. But I had told the guys in Dead Front that if Slipknot ever called me, the Slipknot was notorious for poaching band members from other bands, you know what I mean? And stuff like that I would not join because I wanted to do it on my own. I wanted to do it with the guys that I was jamming with at the time. So I did say no again at that point. And we
said no to them twice.
I said no to them twice. Yeah. And then we had a gig outside of Des Moines with Dead Front. And I was just frustrated. Wasn't having a good night. There wasn't a lot of people there. There was a few people that we brought from Des Moines that were there to see the show. And I just felt like I was spinning my wheels. I didn't feel like we were getting any interest from anywhere. And even if we were getting interest, like, what do we do with it? We were trying to record demos, and we recorded one CD that we put out. But what do you do with it? Later on, like in the past couple of years, I after talking to Aaron again and reacquainting with him and kind of reestablishing our relationship, turns out Interscope Records was interested in Dead Front. They were going to send somebody out after I had said yes and joined Slipknot.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, things happen for a reason. So there was a day that came where I decided at that show, out of town, I called Clown Collect from a payphone and was like, did you guys find a guitar player yet? Because I knew they had a few other dudes in mind. And I knew who the dudes were that they had in mind. And I figured they just found a dude because, now they're professional. They've got schedules. They've got timelines. They got shit going on. They got to look at like putting a tour together, mixing, mastering, like it's real for them now, So I thought that they had found somebody, but I called Clown Collect from Iowa City or Cedar Rapids.
It just hit you one day. Night. You're like, I'm just going to call him.
Well, so my buddy, Zach Dieter, we were taking a break from playing at this club in Iowa City or Cedar Rapids. And I sat down with Zach and his buddy, Kelly, my buddy, Kelly, and we were talking and I was having a few drinks and I was like, Slipknot called me up and asked me to join again. And Zach was like, he's always been like kind of like my voice of reason, really good friend. Friends are deep, man. Friends are heavy. Like they really help you like ascend when you need them to. So I told him, hey, Clown and Ross Robinson and Joey called me and, they asked me to join Slipknot. And he was like, well, what'd you say? I said, I told him no. And he looked at me. Zach's a funny guy. He's like, what are you, fucking stupid? And I was like, I kind of took me off guard. I was like, well, no, man, I don't want to be handed anything. I don't want to be, he's like, you've worked for it. You've been working since you were 14 years at it. You're not being handed anything. And this is what he said to me. He said, very few times in life do you have a chance or an opportunity to take a quantum leap forward. He's like, you can't say no to those opportunities. You have to take those opportunities because you can always come back and do this. And
most people never get that opportunity.
Dude, if you wouldn't have said that to me, that was huge. If it wasn't for Zach, I never would have called Clown Collect that night.
Change your entire life.
Exactly. Moment. The minute he was done having that conversation and I had that epiphany and he was basically beating this knowledge into my head because I was too dumb to figure it out on my own. I went and called Clown Collect, and I was like, did you guys find somebody? And he's like, no, it was a Saturday night. He's like, come over tomorrow, bring your girl. I'll play you the stuff we've been working on and we can have a talk. And I made up my mind that day, had the conversation with my girlfriend, Penny, at the time. And that week basically went into work in the morning and told my boss, I was screen printing t-shirts at the time. I told my boss, Ed, hey man, I got an opportunity to join this band. There's 5 songs I got to learn. I got to learn the whole album. I got to learn their repertoire, their tunes that they've been writing. And I have to go to Malibu to record a few songs. So I can't give you a 2 weeks notice. And I'm sorry for that, but this is my opportunity to do what it is I've been working my life to do. And literally that was a Monday morning. Later on that day, I went to Mick's house and he just started showing me the tunes, like literally. And then I started going to Sid's house where they were rehearsing at the time and learning everything. And one week I was in a BMW with Mick, which is funny. Mick and I were just talking about that, the last writing session we had, talking about that drive out to California together. And I knew Mick around town. He wasn't like a close friend of mine. We had hung out like maybe once or twice. Excuse me, as guitar players, but it's funny how like you never know what the other person is thinking and you can never read anybody else's mind, but we were so like-minded but so different in the way. And he was talking about that drive out to Malibu in that older BMW, like I think it was like an 80s, like jalopy. I'm surprised we made it. We literally drove straight through without stopping to get there to record. And 1 week I was going to work, punching a clock, rehearsing with Dead Front, doing weekend gigs, and literally a week later, I'm in Malibu recording with Ross Robinson and all the guys in Slipknot, which was really cool because I had always wanted to play with Joey. He was one of those drummers that he just had something, and you knew, and I knew, much like Corey, when I joined Stone Sour, I joined Stone Sour because I didn't necessarily love the music Stone Sour was doing at the time. It wasn't really my vibe. It was a little bit more on the kind of quote unquote like hair metal or butt rock kind of vibe or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean? And I like kind of edgier kind of shit that has more teeth. You know what I mean? Um, but I saw something in Corey that was undeniable. He has that stardust. He has that thing. And you can just tell that he's so passionate about what he does that he puts his soul into it. And then the dude's so talented. It's like, I have to play guitar in this band, regardless of what it is. Like, we can make it into what it can be, And then when he left to join Slipknot, I was absolutely devastated. But then I had the opportunity to work, with Corey again, and also to work with Mick, who is probably one of the best guitar players in the world, even by Midwest standards, and a guy that I had seen play in other bands before that has the technical proficiency of guitar players that I'd only seen on television or in videotapes. It's hard to believe guys like that, they exist in Des Moines, Iowa, and I'm truly just blessed to be able to work with the guys that I was able to work with. Paul, I mean, what to say about Paul? I mean, one of the most creative individuals I've ever met. I learned so much from Paul about writing and arranging and the work that goes into it and where it comes from and where it can lead to. And he was such a pure soul. I mean, he just wanted to jam. He just wanted to rock. Like, he didn't want any of the drama. He didn't want any of the bullshit. He's from Southern California originally. He ended up in Iowa because his mom wanted to get him and Tony, his brother, away from, like Southern California, Compton area, because
Oh
he
yeah.
probably would have ended up being a gang at that time, and probably would have, bad things might have happened. So she picked the farthest place away from that type of lifestyle that she could find, and it happened to be Des Moines, Iowa.
Worked out pretty well for him.
And these things, like I say, man, it's almost like it's cosmic. It's like a book that's writing itself. You
I
can't
was just gonna
make it
say,
up,
man, the stars just aligned like in the
everything
perfect
comes
way.
together and everything happens for a reason. And I really believe, like, people are put here for a reason and for a purpose. And that helps me a lot. Going back to an earlier part of our conversation, part of me joining Slipknot and saying no to it is there's a level of imposter syndrome that I felt like I would have had, and I did have for quite a few years, even after helping Joey and Paul and becoming part of the writing process for the Iowa record and thereabouts on. I was the new guy at that time. I was the last dude to join the band. So, like, I just sat back and I became that introverted, quiet guy, like sitting in a band meetings. I didn't have anything to say because it didn't have anything to do with me. You know what I mean? So.
Over the last decade, Triumph motorcycles have been my daily rider. I've owned several of them over the years, but there's a reason I keep coming back. Even as the technology has evolved, Triumph has stayed true to what made the brand iconic in the first place. They still build motorcycles with timeless, classic styling, but underneath, they're packed with modern performance, comfort, and reliability. Right now, Triumph is offering something really special: the Elvis Presley Edition T120 motorcycle. Inspired by Elvis's famous Triumph from 1965, it's a beautiful tribute that blends British craftsmanship with a piece of rock and roll history. And right now you can enter for a chance to win a one-of-one hand-painted Elvis tribute guitar case, inside of which you'll find the original artwork sketches from artist James Willis, along with an ebony Epiphone J45 studio guitar. The contest ends on September 30th, so head over to triumphmotorcycles.com to learn more and register to win. One of the most iconic and notable things about the band, obviously, is the masks. I think that's, really something that differentiated Slipknot. What's the story behind that?
The mask thing, that happened before I had joined the band, and that was a weird thing that I struggled with. I couldn't imagine myself being in a band that wore masks. I was very reluctant And I put that off as long as I absolutely could. Like even the first gigs we had, the first photo shoot we did, I didn't even have my own mask. I didn't even start building my own mask. I wore the bondage hood that Josh had worn for that. The way it was explained to me is it was sort of a counter statement to fashion, because music had started becoming fashion. And don't get me wrong, fashion is a big part of music, much as like, culture, it's culture, music is culture, fashion is culture, art, it's culture, and it all lives in the same sort of atmosphere. That was like a counter statement to like, this isn't about how we look and who we are as individuals. And Slipknot is not about one individual person. That's why we're 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's why there's masks, and your mask is your personality. And it was to, it sort of had a reverse effect. It was to sort of detract away from the individual. But what it ended
Almost
up
gave you
doing
all
is
such an identity.
it gave us the identity, and it turned into being such a huge sort of like talking point that it, like after a while we were just like, Jesus Christ, we're talking about masks again. You know what I mean? But there's also something as reluctant as I was to wanting to do the mask thing. I did find when we started touring and playing these shows, like, other than walking from the dressing room to the stage or doing a photo shoot in downtown Nashville where you feel really odd and out of place and awkward and just like, well, here's 9 guys walking around in orange jumpsuits, like with wearing masks. It's like we're drawing a lot of attention to ourselves. I did find that it really helped me, like, instead of just like head banging and like putting my head down and hiding myself behind my hair, I had an identity that was created by the mask that I created, and I could lean into, and
almost a level of anonymity. Like you were
for a while,
almost like hidden, so that you didn't have to like it didn't have to be you that's being famous. You could like kind of hide behind this thing and just focus on the art and the expression.
Focus on the persona. So now I think it's my duty to try to take the me that was playing shows without a mask, say in Stone Sour or Atomic Opera or Dead Front or the Beat Truck Fatals, and figure out how I can mesh that persona who is me with the persona that is the masked guy that's on stage with Slipknot. And it's purely a stage thing. Like, we don't walk around with masks and we don't record with masks on. It's part of
the brand of Slipknot.
And it's the liberation, when you put that mask on, it's like, I would do shit with that mask on that in a million years without it, I'd never do. You know what I mean? Act a certain kind of way. And it opened me up creative in a creative, more type of way. And
almost unleash something from within you that wouldn't come out otherwise.
Yeah. It gives you that confidence. You know what I mean? Like I can do that move that Jimmy Page did. I can do that, Pete Townsend sort of thing. I can kind of have that sort of like over the top, flamboyant in a way sort of thing that I can do that I wouldn't necessarily do if it was just me up there insecure with my ugly mug for everybody to see. You know what I mean? Hiding behind a guitar,
It's like when Batman puts on his mask and becomes a superhero,
Yeah, 100%.
And then I noticed, like, obviously all the masks are different and they change over time. Are they, do you guys kind of design your own? Is it a form of self-expression in a way, or is it just like making like a cool character?
It's all of that. It's self-expression. Different guys approach it in different ways.
You design your own though?
Yeah. I design my own, and we get molded. We got to sit there and have the shit poured over your head and sit there for a half an hour where it's very claustrophobic and you feel like you can't breathe, but it's molded to your face or to my face, each guy that gets molded's face. And my approach to it is I wanted to have a slow evolution of what my mask was so that it didn't become unrecognizable. Whereas, like, say, Corey, he had a completely opposite. Like, every record, he would design something that was so 180 degrees different. But, he's a comic book nerd. He's a movie nerd. He who likes movies, like Marvel, it's DC, whatever it is. He's in that world and he's knowledgeable about it. So he really wanted to be able to express himself in that way. For me, I looked at it as like, let's take McDonald's for an example. You know, if they change the golden arches, then you're going to drive by a McDonald's not knowing that it's a McDonald's unless they let it evolve slowly. As a brand, speaking in terms of a brand, you know, so I wanted to let my mask evolve, but still stay
It's like the same
what it
character
was.
that's just evolving over time.
Yeah, this is where this character was in 99. This is where this character was in 2001. This is where he was in 2004, 2005, and so on, you know. And I don't know what it's going to be for this next, you know, this upcoming thing. So I got to start like really start to wrap my brain around what that's going to be. But it'll still be like very similar to what I've had in the past.
Sounds like you're in a really cool space right now with the creation of this album, and you can kind of let that persona come to you and like reflect it in the persona of your mask.
You get to a point where when things are meant to happen, they just happen. You don't have to work at it. You don't have to force it. You don't have to overthink it. It just presents itself right in front of you. And there's got to be a flow, you know what I mean, to get to that. And it's not just true with what I do, but, you know, actors, athletes, you know, dudes that do motocross or freestyle motocross, or anybody that has any kind of creative or process that,
Dude, speaking of motocross, do you follow motocross at all?
I haven't in years. Like I have a good friend, Dave Castillo, that's like huge. Yeah. He's he's a really, really good friend of mine. And I trying to get him to my new place in Arizona so we can just go rip around in the desert.
Oh, that'd be cool. Have you heard of a rider named Ken Roxon? He's a German kid. He came to America like 15 years ago, turned pro. He just won the Supercross championship like a couple weeks ago. One of the best riders in the world. And he's obsessed with Slipknot.
I think I've
Dude,
heard
he has I think he has a collection of masks and everything.
I think so. I think I've heard of him before, and I think Dave has told me about him, and I think we sent him some shit.
Well, he lives here in Florida, and I wanted to maybe introduce you sometime.
Yeah.
If you'd be down.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I hate riding with dudes. I'd love to go riding with him, but I hate riding with dudes like that because I would go riding with like the dudes from like Todd Hicks from Fox.
Well, maybe we could get him out here to the coast and we could go on a street ride somewhere.
Yeah, street rides would be cool. Like I definitely like. I don't even have a dirt bike.
I think you would geek out on just like seeing your studio and like. You could play like a guitar riff for him. Like I'll send you some
Well, and
link.
if he's into motocross and I'm such good friends with Dave, like I'm sure if they're doing something in Phoenix and I happen to be out there, or if I'm on the West Coast, I would come hang and like go see a I love going to motocross. It's such a cool, like it's one of those things that when you see it happen, it's like, man, I wish I could do that. And when I got to the point where I could buy dirt bikes, you know, I got dirt bikes and I started riding and I was like, shit, this is hard, and shit, I'm getting injured a lot, and, you know, I'm breaking my wrist and I got to sit out a tour. And, you know, so I reeled it back to like play bikes and mountain bikes and all that kind of stuff. Cause if I were to get on like a 450, I would literally die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's no joke, but I'll make that introduction. I think that would be a really cool dude to know. Yeah. He would be stoked to meet you as well.
I'm down with that. And my neighbor at this new place I got in Arizona, he's working on this app where he's mapping just the desert trails everywhere. And it's something similar to like the Polaris, you know, how they have their app that has all the trails and all that kind of stuff. But he does it on like I think he's got like a Husky 300, or maybe it's a KTM. But he goes, and as he's going, he's tracking where he's going, and they're going to have all these maps. I mean, where I live in Arizona now, there is literally hundreds and thousands of miles of trails. You can just go and you can get lost, and you can go for days. I can get all the way to the Grand Canyon from my place.
That's cool.
Don't even have to I might have to pop out onto a street, fuel up, do stuff like that, but I can pop right back up on the trails, camp the whole way up.
That's epic.
Find cool, like, you know, like glamping places or hotels. And eventually I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. And it's better for me to stay on four wheels because, you know, I tried following Dave one time. He took me to Lake Elsinore and I really messed up my MCL like pretty bad.
Yeah.
because I'm trying to keep up with them because I think I ride better than I really do. And you're talking about pros that have been riding since they were 10 years old or younger. And these guys are like smashing triples and they don't even have to think about it. And they're doing flips. And
Yeah, you can't try to hang with them.
no, man. And what I thought he was doing was real chill. He was just carving out a hill, going down a dip. And
They make it
just
look easy.
you know? And I was like, oh, I got that. But next thing I know, I'm upside down with the bike on top of me. And he turns around and he's laughing at me. He's like, were you trying to follow me? And I was like, well, yeah, man, I don't know where I'm going. You brought me out to this trail. I can't, I don't want to just go putt around over here on the kiddie trail, like.
Dude, dirt bikes will get you in trouble quick.
Big time.
But speaking of, Kenny and how big of a fan he is, I think it's insane how this band that is like so aggressive, so intense, dark, like became one of the biggest bands in the world.
Yeah.
Like what is it about Slipknot that just connected with people?
I have no idea. I really don't know. I don't know if there is a very huge culture behind it, which, I have a lot of gratitude for that because not a lot of bands get that. And it seems like the band is just getting bigger and bigger
Doesn't happen.
It's so weird. I don't understand it. Sid used to say we're the new stars of the end times, you know what I mean? And that resonates. I mean, we took a hiatus from touring so we could get creative and start writing again, but we're bumping up to stadiums. Like when we go back out, I don't know if I should be saying that. I don't know when this is going to air or not.
We can figure out when.
Yeah. But, we're literally taking that jump and we've created a scarcity in touring that there's so much like want, like all the booking agents are like, please do this show. Please come to do this show. And we're just like, no, we're recording.
And there's this big revival of the 2000s right now, which is
I saw that. And that happens, man. That's like fashion. That's like, movies, everything. It has a cycle. Things come in and out of cycle, like skinny jeans are big and then whatever, it's gay. And then all of a sudden flares and now baggies. I see people wearing kickwear and, Janko and stuff like that.
2000s music is back.
Yeah.
In a big way. It's cool.
Which is wild because the new shit we're writing does not sound like that at all. Like we're not digressing or de-evolving into that sort of thing. There's elements of it. I mean, we write how we write, so we're always going to have a little bit of a vibe, but you're not going to hear, I don't know, for lack of a better term, a new metal record out of us, if that makes any sense. I don't know that we've ever been new metal. I think we just came out at a time when new metal was happening. So
you got lumped in.
That's where we got lumped, because when the new wave of American metal happened, they lumped us into that when I would do guitar interviews with magazines. And I'm like, wait a minute, I thought we were new metal, but now we're doing interviews with like Lamb of God and, and bands like that. And I'm just like, okay, whatever. And to me, I think we're just Slipknot. We're just Slipknot.
Yeah, you can't
music,
can't put you in a box.
I don't think there is a box. We have so many elements because everybody in the band comes from different musical backgrounds that, there are those bands that go out and they kind of create their own thing where you can hear like maybe an influence here and there, but like when you hear U2, there's not really any other band to sound like U2 unless they're emulating U2's early career, you know what I mean? But they evolved into something that's their own thing. That's what they do, I suppose you could probably put Muse in that category, although I do hear a lot of Queen influence in some of the stuff that Bellamy's doing and the way he writes and approaches music. But, there are bands that are uncategorizable. And I think, I don't know if it's whether I think or I hope, I don't know what the right word is. I hope, or I think, and, or both, that is what Slipknot is. I'm talking to that with the producer we're working with. We're working with Matt Wallace right now to write this stuff. And, there's times where we just kind of sit back and we're listening to what I just worked on. And it's just like, I'm just like, wow, this is wild. This sounds like nothing I've ever heard before, yet there's a familiarity to it that feels like I've been listening to it my whole life. And it's so organic. It's just Slipknot music.
That's cool, man. You've had so much success over such a long period of time, and it sounds like even now it's like going better than ever, which is really cool. Do you ever like take a moment to step back and realize like you're just a Midwestern kid? And do you ever just think like how crazy it is where you are now?
I think it's really bananas where I am now, and you know, I literally thank God every day for where I'm at. You know what I mean? I don't know how anybody will take this. I'm not necessarily a religious person, but I am very spiritual. Like, do you think there is a greater power? And I try to give as much energy back to that power as it's given me, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be able to do what it is. There's a reason I was able to pick up guitar and play the way I play. And, you know, it wasn't just because I'm a human that spent a lot of time woodshedding. You know, something out there created that and gave me that gift. And I think anybody can get given that gift, whatever it is. Once they find their calling, once they find their path, once they find their passion, all they got to do is manifest it, you know? And I know that sounds like all this kind of new age bullshit, whatever,
Not
but
really though. There's so much truth to that, dude.
I think it's a real thing, man. I really think you're put here for a reason, and you can write your own code, so to speak. You know what I mean?
So true. I've felt that throughout my entire life as well. If you ride motorcycles long enough, you start to realize it's not about if something bad will happen, it's about when. And when it does, having the right people in your corner makes all the difference. That's why I've partnered with my friends at Rider Justice. They're not just a law firm, they're actually riders. They understand the risks we take every time we throw a leg over the bike, and they're here to support specifically the motorcycle community. From helping you understand insurance coverage to being by your side to help you through the process and provide you with resources if you ever happen to find yourself in an accident. But what I really respect is what they do beyond that, educating riders to be more prepared, hosting crucial safety training, showing up to events, supporting the community, embedding themselves in the culture, and actively working to make the roads safer for all of us. You can learn more and find the resources that you might need at riderjustice.com. So speaking of like how crazy it is, how far you've come, has there ever been a moment throughout your career that just felt like surreal? Like me went on stage for the first time at like some big venue, or like, is there like one moment in your mind where you're like, dude, this is crazy?
There's been a couple of surreal moments I've had, but they always deal with, let's say it harkens back sort of to my childhood and my influences and the musicians that I admired as a very young child that were like not even my generation. I was at the Rainbow hanging out. We were recording a record, and it was just a really, I think it was a weeknight, maybe a Tuesday or Wednesday night. Wasn't a lot of people hanging out, but I was having a cigarette, and I don't drink alcohol, so I think I had like a soda or something, hanging out with a few other friends of mine. But John Entwistle from The Who was sitting right behind me. And it was so surreal to me. I felt like I was living in a comic book, because this is a person that is so legendary to me. It's hard for me to process that he's a real human being. You know what I mean? And here he is with a jean jacket on, collars popped, sipping tea like a proper English gentleman at the Rainbow. And this is really soon before he passed away. And I said hi to him. I didn't want to bother him. You know, he was in his element. He was probably trying to relax, you know, and but I could not try to speak to the gentleman, you know. I mean, if it wasn't for guys like him, they formed my life. Literally, my life was formed by guys like him. And I just kind of wanted, in a sort of understated way, let him know that he's the man, you know what I mean? And he was a proper English gentleman. And we just had a short, small conversation. And it's same thing happened with Sting. I ran into Sting walking the streets of Manhattan. Me and V-Man, our bass player, were walking, and Gordon Sumner just walks right out in front of us. So we're following him for a few blocks. And I'm like, we're stopped waiting for a crosswalk to light up so we can cross the street. And I'm like, I have to talk to Sting, because there again, one of the most influential, talented musicians in pop rock music that, and not just a musician, but, an actor and a spiritual human being. This guy is vibrating on very high levels. And I just said, oh, hey, Sting, what's she in town for? Are you gigging? And he's like, no, we just played Toronto. We got a night off. And I'm like, do you have a gig? He's like, tomorrow night. I'm like, damn, we're on a day off. And he's like, oh, really? He's like, well, what band are you in? Because I said we were there for a day off. And I was like, I play in a band called Slipknot. And he's like, oh yeah, I've heard of Slipknot. Yeah, great band. And it was fucking Sting. And I was
That's
just
so cool.
and that was so surreal to me. And then that was it. That was the extent of the conversation. I didn't, I tried not to punish, but even me just talking to him maybe is a form of punishing at some level. But, when I get to meet guys like that, I got to meet Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey at like a town hall that they did. And when I met Pete and Lou Brutus, also a very good friend of mine, radio personality, interviewer, photographer, man of many words, he made it possible for me to meet these guys, and I'll be forever grateful to him for that, because these are people that were not only idols to me, but to my parents. You know what I mean? These are, it's just wild, the circle of life and how it all comes together. But when Lou introduced me to Pete Townsend, he kind of lit up a little bit. Like, Pete, this is Jim Root. He plays for a band called Slipknot. He's a big fan of yours. And you could kind of see him, because it looked like what they were doing before in this town hall seemed like work. You know what I mean? How you can kind of see a vibe on a person, where I was kind of like, yeah, we're here, we're doing this thing. And it was a meet and greet and all that kind of thing. And I waited at the end of the line because I didn't want to have him sign anything. I just wanted to like have a conversation with him and let him know that, the reason I play tellies is because I saw him with a telly when I was a kid, and the way he jumps around and moves on stage. If you look at Pete Townsend's early like videos from The Who, he's one of the first dudes that was like jumping in the air with his guitar up like that. And he's like, to me, he's the inventor of that whole kind of thing. And, I had to let him know that it's his fault that I am what I am in Slipknot.
That's awesome.
But I could see him light up, like his eyes got wide. And even Lou mentioned something about that, and I gave Roger and him my number because we were getting ready to play Download. And I was like, if you guys want to come see us play at Download, like, obviously you're going to have carte blanche, VIP treatment, the whole thing. But, he never called. So,
Hey, but it must be really cool to meet some of your musical heroes and be in a band big enough that they even know who you are.
It's wild. It's wild because I can't look at it in any way objectively. I still feel like I'm just a dumb guitar player from Iowa, a kid from Iowa trying to figure out how to make it. I still feel that way. I still feel like it hasn't happened yet. I still feel like I'm trying to make it happen.
That's crazy.
And maybe that's part of the work ethic, and maybe that's part of the humility. I think humility is a huge thing, man. I see so many bands out there that like, maybe they landed a deal and they're on their first tour and they got their first record out, and maybe they got a tune that's doing hot and going viral or blowing up. And I see a lot of attitude in that, and the way they act is like they're, like they already think that they're at this like Pete Townsend type of level. And it's like, wait a minute, man, what kind of dues have you paid? How much work have you put into this? Has this been handed to you? Are you an industry plant? What is going on here? Why do you need to act the way you're acting? And I used to just like, it used to give me anxiety being around people like that, and I don't know, there's a new me and I'm a little bit more outspoken. And I think if I ever run into that type of individual, I might just put them in their fucking place if they have it coming, because it still happens,
Yeah.
I think if there was a grain of humility in some of these people that are trying to make it, and you see it more in the bands that haven't put the work in and made it to that level, more so than you see it in guys like, you talk to James Hetfield, and it's just like you and I sitting here talking. He will just have a grown up conversation with you as he's known you forever. because there's no ego there. He's a human working through life just like everybody else.
We all are, yeah. People lose
Yeah.
sight of that.
Yeah.
Your head gets a little too big if
And it happens to I'm sure it's happened to me in the past before too, so.
yeah, you can grow out of it and hopefully, ideally.
Yeah. And my apologies to anybody that I may have met like in a mall courtyard while I'm having lunch or on my way somewhere. And if I'm in a shit mood, I'm not a total dick. I was just probably having a day that day. And,
it happens.
You
You can't be perfect for everyone in every moment, especially when there's a lot of people that want your attention.
Yeah.
But as a band that's been together for so long, obviously you guys have had a lot of success and good times, but like it's not always easy. I think being in a group and in these relationships for this long, you go through ups and you go through downs. What have been some of the biggest challenges of the journey of Slipknot?
The learning curve that you're going through that you don't know you're going through. You know what I mean? That's where it all stems from. All the when you first start out and you're hungry and everybody's in it to win it and you're willing to make all these sacrifices to do what it is you're trying to do. And then you reach certain pinnacles of success, but you don't know where it's going to go to necessarily. And then, musical differences start happening and personality conflicts start happening. And, the typical thing that happens to every band is, like everybody focuses on the lead singer and then you get ego fucking battles going on between people. And, so the hardest yet the coolest thing about it all is working through all that, being able to like rise above it and not break up and not let the band fall apart because of all these things and grow as humans, and not just grow as humans, but grow as the entity you are that are creating, the things you're creating. And it's not just music. It's, the photography and the videos and the artwork from Clown and how that ties in to each of our personalities, and it ties into the music that we are creating. And, it's pretty heavy. It's just like, I don't know, man. It's cool, and I wouldn't change any of it, even the hardships and even the disagreements and all that stuff, because that all helps you grow.
That's half the battle, dude. Because like you have to make good music to find success in what you're doing, but like you also have to maintain these relationships, because there's a lot of bands that are still really great, but they break up because these people start hating each other and they want to just move on. And
well, and a lot of that's due to just like a lot of time spent together. Being a band's like being married, and people change and they grow over time, and sometimes they grow apart, sometimes they grow closer together.
You have good chapters and bad chapters.
Yeah. And if you can, if you can look past all that, see through all these differences and learn how to communicate more so than anything, because that's probably one of the hardest things. Like I can talk to one of my bros about like, Corey or Clown or Mick or somebody in the band, and I can talk to them and say certain things that I probably wouldn't say to their face in the past. But now I've realized I've found myself speaking in a manner that anything that I say to somebody that's outside of the band, even if it's like my mom or my girlfriend or one of my best friends outside of the band, like I find myself more and more like, these are things that I would say directly to this person that I'm talking about.
Like if I wouldn't say it to their face, I'm not going to say it.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas before that might not have necessarily been the case, and not in like a, malicious sort of way, just more in a like, this is how we differ and fuck that guy for this type of thing. But now it'd be like, you know what? Hey, you did this thing and it kind of made me feel this certain kind of way. Where was that coming from? And now but
that's just maturity with age.
Yeah. And on the other side of that, I can also like give accolades where accolades are due, because I've worked with enough different musicians now at this point in my life that I can really gain and realize the appreciation I have for the guys in Slipknot that I'm working with, and realize that, man, I'm blessed. And I'm so lucky to be working with these dudes that bring so much to the table that make me look good for what it is that I do. You know what I mean? And that's That's huge. That's a huge thing to be able to have a group that can, after this many years, see it through, you know? And are we ever going to not do it? I don't know. Are we ever going to semi-retire? Maybe. Are we going to tour less? Probably. I mean, I'm getting old, man. I'm 6'6" and 54 now. Getting out of bed hurts. You know what I mean? So jumping around on a stage and getting hit by kegs and shit like that. I don't know how into that I am, but being in a close proximity to all these guys, and it's just not the guys in the band, it's the crew too, and it's hotel rooms and traveling. That's the hardest part of it all. And that is where all this stuff stems from. You know what I mean? If you've got no place to go to get away from, in some cases, if you're in the police, you're trying to get away from two guys. If you're in Slipknot, you're trying to get away from 8 other guys. You know what I mean? And it's like, if you don't have that place where you can go and just let the steam blow off and collect your thoughts, and then it's hard. And that all contributes to these, I don't want to say conflicts, but these issues that come up that you have to figure out how to approach. And I'm not a very tactful human being. I don't like speaking in metaphors, and I don't like trying to guess what somebody's thinking or what they're saying in the language they're using. I want it to be direct, and I want it to be to the point. And that's how I am. And I think I can be a little bit abrasive in that sense, but you don't ever have to question or wonder where I'm coming from or where you stand.
Well, I mean, you guys are, I think the entire band, just based on your sound, there's clearly some underlying angst within you guys, and that could come out when you get worn thin. And
yeah, more so in the past, but that's still there. I mean, there's always something to be mad about. Look at the world we live in. You know what I mean? And not even maybe mad, just the fear of the unknown and how we're growing. I mean, this world is changing so fast, and the snowball rolling down the hill is
crazy.
It's getting out of control, man. And it's we are in such a bizarre clown world.
We don't even know what tomorrow's going to look like.
And AI, and you add all these different things to it. But the bizarre thing about it is I see all this when I put myself in this prison that's my phone, and I'm in this social media world. I see this, and it's bigger than life, and it feels like it's reality. When I go out into the real world, when I go to Home Depot to, pick up whatever it is, when I have communications, conversations with people that are outside of it, I don't see any of that. So is it even real? Are we in 2 different realities? Are there multiple different timelines happening? What is there really this clown world? Because shit's really happening. That's really fucked up.
I think shit's happening, but we have to continue living.
Yeah.
So people are carrying on with their lives. We don't know what tomorrow's going to look like, but what are you going to do? You got to keep living.
Got to keep living. I don't know, lads. Buy guns. Get lots of ammo.
Yeah. I've been working with 805 beer for close to a decade now, and to me, it's much more than just a beer. I feel like they represent a way of living. 805 was born on California's Central Coast, where life moves to the rhythm of surf, motorcycles, music, and the outdoors. Whether you're coming off a ride, hanging out with friends, or watching the sunset at the end of an awesome day, 805 is right there with you. What I respect most is their commitment to sustainability. This is their home, and they treat it that way. Conserving water, reducing waste, and constantly thinking about how to do things better for the future. They support the athletes, the events, and the culture that we all care about. But more than anything, they support a lifestyle that's real. That's why 805 has been a staple in my life for so long. So talking about the more challenging moments of Slipknot, I think the most obvious one is losing Paul Gray, the death of one of your band members. Was there a point during that experience where you guys contemplated not continuing on?
That was a rough one. I mean, Paul, in a lot of ways, was the heart and soul of the band. He was the guy maybe like kind of like the George Harrison-y sort of personality in the band where, you know, Joey and Clown were always at each other's throats. And don't get me wrong, Paul was a scrapper and he had a very strong personality. And when he got mad at somebody, you knew it. There was no disguising it. But at the end of the day, he just wanted to jam. He was like, why shit doesn't have to be this hard. We don't have to have these different disagreements. And that's, you know, that's age, that's being younger, that's letting ego drive your mentality maybe a little bit and maybe not realizing it. It could be little differences in the vision or the direction of the band from certain people. But Paul was just like, guys, we're getting to do what it is we've dreamt of doing since we were children. And we're doing it out of Des Moines, Iowa. All this shit is petty and none of this matters. You know what I mean? I don't know how much of that had an effect on Paul's disease. He clearly had a lot of demons that he was struggling with, and I don't know much about Paul's life before I became close to him. I didn't dig. I figured if he wanted to talk about it, he would talk to me about it. We would have deep conversations about certain things. And, you know, in a lot of ways, I was very similar to him. I'm like, you know, we don't argue about all this dumb bullshit. We get to go play like our music in front of people. And even if we're having a bad show, you know, our worst day out here on tour is better than most people's best day at their law firm that they work at or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like we're truly blessed, and people out in the crowd don't know we're having a bad show. You know, the only one that might think they're having a bad show might be Joey back there pissed off about some monitor mix or a missed flam, or maybe I was too far behind the beat somewhere. We weren't slamming hard enough, or, you know, I mean, we drove each other. Like it was a competition. It was like, you know, coming off stage for quite a few years, mainly around the Iowa cycle, there was a lot of like, we need to step it up. You need to step it up. You're not pulling your part. You're not jumping high enough. You're not banging your head enough. You're not, you know, a
lot of tension there.
But that tension was also a creative factor in pushing us forward in a certain kind of way. You know, after 2 neck surgeries and a back surgery, you know.
I'm glad you guys didn't give it up after his passing and continued making music, and rather than,
I don't think we could have, and I think he would have wanted us to go on.
Now you go on in honor of him,
yeah.
Right? You know,
and I've said it before, like when I went, you know, the stuff I started writing after Paul was gone, I didn't realize how much I had learned from him about writing and arranging music until I didn't have him there to help me. But I did have him there to help me. And years ago, you know, I said this in an interview, probably a couple of interviews. So my apologies if I'm being redundant about it, but I never understood the, like, you know, when somebody passes, they say, oh, they're with you though. They're here. They're with you. I'm like, bullshit. They're on another dimension now. They've ascended. They're, you know, they're wherever they're at, but it's not necessarily a path that they're talking about. There's a very distinct possibility that there could be another dimension that he's looking down over us on and going, you know, ha ha ha, you're still doing whatever you're doing. But what I took from it was when I sat down, you know, the recording situation that I showed you earlier, the one I had at my other house was a little bit smaller of a setup, but I noticed myself doing things that Paul would do when I would work with Paul. He would take extra time to look at different, like, fingering augmentations, different areas on the fretboard. Would it sound better if I did it here? Would it have more impact could I add another note if I did it here? And I never did that before. I just like, here's the riff. Blah, blah, blah. That's a killer riff. Boom. Let's go with that. You know, and I found myself going, wait a minute. Okay. That's a killer riff. It might be a little bit like too notey or whatever, but if I try moving here, maybe if I try it in this position on the neck, maybe if I invert it and try it on the higher, and then I realize that's Paul. That's Paul doing that. That's what I learned from Paul. And that is how he is here with me, helping me through this process. You know? And it's the same thing with Joe, you know. I mean, I know Joe hadn't been in the band for 10 years, you know, before he passed, but you know, we had our issues and our problems, but you know, a legendary human who was just, you know, the same introverted kind of nerdy kid from Iowa that was in Montefideus that I wanted to jam with. But really grown an appreciation for the relationship that I did have with Joe and what it taught me, you know, not just about humans and humanity and how to treat humans or how not to treat humans, but also about how to put music together, you know. He was obsessed with music. It literally was his entire life.
I feel like heavy music that you guys play carries a lot of weight behind it. Like, I don't know. It feels like there could be like pain or anger or trauma behind it. When you think about like maybe the darkness behind Slipknot's music, do you feel like that the sound of your music at the time maybe has some representation of how you're feeling at the time?
100%. 100%. Yeah. But, you know, it is an outlet. And that's what it always was. Like, even when I was a teenager listening to bands like Megadeth and Anthrax, that's like, you know, young male, lots of testosterone, lots of anger, lots of rage. Where do you get it out at? In a mosh pit at a show. You know what I mean? That to me is better than, you know, knocking over a 7-Eleven or getting in street fights or, you know, ganging up or whatever. You know, it's a much healthier sort of outlet.
You think you and the band members, like, I mean, particularly in the early days when Slipknot formed, was there like cumulatively in the band, was there like a lot of anger and past, you know, fuel that led to the sound of this band?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And a lot of it, well, you know, some of it could have been anger, but some of it also could have been just the drive to, like I said before, when we started up, to kill the industry. We have to be the biggest band. We have to be you know, the hardest band. We have to jump higher. We have to bang our heads more. We have to, like, you know, we're out on tour with Hatebreed. We're out on tour with Seven Dust. These guys are all over the place, you know, Head PE at the time, Machine Head. You know, we got to drive these bands into the ground, and we got to, like, you know, we got to overcome. We got to, like, you know, and don't get me wrong, we were, you know, there were definitely peers and there were definitely guys that we looked up to, but we wanted to crush them. We wanted to crush everybody. We wanted to be the not, you know what I mean? The kings.
It's a cool mentality.
And,
you have to have that mentality to rise to the top.
yeah. And I don't know if that really ever goes away, because I still feel that way, even though, you know, like I said, you know, but being 54, how do you relate to somebody that's half your age, and how do you write music that resonates with them? And, you know, you see music follows patterns and trends happen and all that stuff. And I think as long as you're true to yourself, you have that honesty, and you know, you're doing it for the right reasons, I think it shines through and it is relatable. Plus, you know, we're blessed with a Corey Taylor who's so metaphorical in his lyrics. Earlier, you were talking about the darkness and the heaviness that's in the heavy music, but there's also a lot of light. There's a lot of positivity in his metaphorical, you know, sort of like approach to writing lyrics. Like, you can take it like at face value, but if you look at the metaphor, you can really make it into anything. Like, you know, the song Kill Pop, you know, I thought was about like an ex-girlfriend or a woman, but no, it's about his relationship with the music industry. You know what I mean? So, and that's another beautiful thing about the way he writes. Like, even if he's not talking about something that has anything to do with your life, you can take that and really pertain it to something that is in your life and make it help you get through a situation, help you get through, you know, whether it's a breakup or a bad relationship or losing a loved one or whatever it is. It's, you know, and that's kind of all about what art is, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's like teaching us sensitive humans, if you're not like a sociopath or a psychopath, how to deal with all the pain that comes along with this beautiful gift we've been given, you
Life is
know.
beautiful, but life is pain.
Yeah,
It's
it
tough,
sure
man,
is.
for all of us.
And you just got to try to find the beauty in that pain. It's in there, you know.
And I think that's what this music is. And I think like one thing I love about Slipknot is the contrast. And there's like these like really nice melodic moments that feel light and like optimistic, and then there's this dark
Yeah.
driving energy, which is cool. And even with your guitar playing, it's just like fast and heavy, and then all of a sudden it's like the slow breakdown, and you just want to like, yeah, like dude, it's so sick. And then
it's
you can tell you're just experimenting with different sounds, and there's it's going up and it's going down, and
a microcosm of life, and you know the way it's the same thing as life. You're gonna have those moments that are easy where you're flowing through it. You're gonna have those moments where everything's against you, everything's a Murphy, and you know it just seems like you're not gonna be able to keep your head above water. But it all passes, man. It all, you know, for better or worse. It's how you work through it and get to the next level.
speaking of that authenticity and that expression of your voice and feeling, we were talking a little before this podcast. You're writing a new record and you're really excited about the sound. Can you kind of maybe tease like what the direction of this new sound might be?
I mean, you know, it's Slipknot, so we're gonna have a sound, but at the same time, having Eloy in the band is like such, man, it's such an honor to be able to jam with that guy. And the way we're approaching this, like, yeah, I can sit at my computer, excuse me, and I can, you know, I can throw some drum loops up and start writing riffs and layer it and do, you know, and that's great. And then I can give it to the band and Corey can put lyrics on it and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, it has its place, but the way we're approaching this, which is similar to the way it was being approached in the beginning, is like garage band sort of vibe. Like now we're going to a church, we're setting up Eloy, I'm setting up, you know, a guitar rig, and we're just jamming for like 2 hours. And then out of those 2 hours, we'll go back, and as we're playing, like Clown will be in the room and he's got headphones on, and he might start jamming with us, or he might just be listening to what we're doing. And he'll be like, he'll throw his arm up or he'll hit the light. And that's a cue to our producer. Like that's a part, you know what I mean? That's in his mind, he's thinking that's a chorus. That's an intro. That's a verse line. That's a bridge, whatever part it may be. But then he'll look at us and he'll be like, stick with that. Or he'll be like, that was cool, move on, you know what I mean? Like go somewhere else with that, you know what I mean? And so what we've been able to do is do these jams, and then we'll take a break. Clown will go in, and I'll sit with Clown and Matt, our producer, and he'll just start arranging the song out of it all, out of just off the top of our head jams. And it's so organic and so honest, and it's so open to interpretation. I couldn't tell you what the direction of this next record is going to be. I know I'm writing some of the fastest, like grind picking riffs, some of the most melodic, like heavy, like doomy kind of riffs, a lot of like really pretty, like, you know, just beautiful, like clean interludes and things like that are finding their way into these songs. A lot of like sort of like just experimental, like, you know, I don't want to say Pink Floyd, but maybe somewhere in that wheelhouse.
I like that you don't have to be defined by one sound, and like you're really embracing this idea of authenticity, like letting it flow from within you and let like your true sound come out.
It's the most honest way that I can think to write music, other than, you know, as opposed to, like I said before, like when I'm sitting in front of a computer and I'm trying to write a song, it's contrived. I know that's what I'm there to do. When we do a jam, we don't know what's going to happen. We could start a jam that happened so cool, we just get a song top to bottom without even thinking about it, because sometimes that does happen. We could jam for 2 hours and there might be two things in there that are cool that we could use for something else or any combination of all that stuff. But what it's doing is it's leaving a band of 9 guys so free and so open that no matter what a riff is or what a part is, you know, if Mick hasn't taken part in one of the jams that we've done, he can come in, he can hear an arrangement, he can be like, I know what I can do with this, and I'm not going to do what you're doing with this. I'm going to do what I want to do with this, and they can live together. You know what I mean? It's not just like, we're going to come up, we're going to meet up here, and we're going to play in unison, and then we're going to go into the slam part, and then it's going to come back out into the verse, and they, you know, it's none of that kind of bullshit. It's just literally letting it evolve in a very organic, natural way, as it should. And that's hard to do when you're not a singer-songwriter. You know what I mean? Singer-songwriters can do that all day long because everything they're writing is coming out of themselves. You know, like
You're collaborating with a group.
It's a group effort.
Yeah.
But, you know, like the guy from, I don't know why, I just watched a video about mixing from this guy, but the dude from Tame Impala, it's mostly all him. You know what I mean? So he has these things in his mind and his heart that he's trying to get out. And
it's a lot easier when it's just you.
He's able to do it. You know what I mean? If he's got the bass riff in his head, he can go grab the bass and lay it down that way. If he's got the synth thing,
it's a lot harder to get 9 dudes onto the same wavelength to express a unified vision that all works together.
And maybe it doesn't have to. Maybe I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be great.
But we have so much material, probably at least 50 like arrangements, you know. I'm not saying they're all full songs and they all need work, you know. We're trying to leapfrog, go sort of back to the We Are Not Your Kind process, where start working on something, getting it to a level, shelving it, working on something else, coming back to it, going, okay, now let's take this to another level, and sort of doing that leapfrog where we can let everything evolve and, you know, hopefully at one point get to where it's like, I don't know if we can let these evolve. Sort of like making a movie. A lot of directors say they don't finish making a movie. They just abandon the project.
You just eventually accept, like, I'm going to leave it as it is.
Yep. Here's where it's at, you know?
Yeah. What are some similarities between playing guitar and riding your motorcycle?
Losing yourself in the moment, for sure. Because when I'm on a motorcycle, I tend to just like sort of like space off into the scenery and just, you know, like shut your brain off. Even though your brain, it's such a wild thing, because even though your brain shut off, you're firing, all your synapses are firing because there's so much going on around you that you have to be aware of. You almost have to have a sixth sense because every car is trying to hit you. You know what I mean? Like, people aren't paying attention. There's a stoplight coming up. Is he going to stop? Is he going to go through? You know what I mean? But at the same time, you're in sort of a Zen state because nothing else matters except for what you're doing at that moment. And that's the exact same thing with a guitar. It's therapy. It's therapeutic. It takes you out of all the things that pile up in everyday life and all the things that might, you know, otherwise make you try to grab a Xanax or, you know, something like that. You're just like, you know what, I'm just going to shut off and expand myself. And guitar and motorcycles are my 2 ways of being able to do that. And lately, side by sides for some weird, odd reason, you know? Yeah.
It's that flow state, man. And people call it, they call it the zone.
The zone, the flow state, 100%.
And it's almost like you referenced earlier, like these master guitar players, they almost reach like a monk like state.
Yeah.
And it's almost just this awareness where it's full presence.
Well, and it's spirituality in the sense that you're inspired when you get to the more time you spend with it. And I think that may be where that derives from, like the spirituality, from being inspired. You're in the spirit, you know. That happens. You know, it's almost like a DMT experience without the DMT. You know what I mean? You can get there. And I think there are ways you can get there without supplementing, you know, so to speak. I've never done that. I think my brain's too dark. I'd probably freak out. But
yeah, some people never come back.
Yeah, no coming back from that one. So the closest for me to be able to get there is to get on a motorcycle and just lose yourself in it.
Do you ever find like creative inspiration for your music, like when you're writing?
Yeah, 100%. I did one of the first trips I did, we rode shovelheads. Terrible idea. From Florida to Sturgis, and I was with a group of dudes. It was me and Jason Harms, that owns a tattoo shop up in Jacksonville, and Bill Dodge from Bling Cycles. And as we were riding, you're on a motorcycle, and if you're not doing two laners and you're just on like a regular interstate highway and you're just going, you have the guys around you, but you're connected to them, but you're in your own space, and you have a lot of time to like clear your mind, clear all the bullshit out of your mind. And when those rides were happening, that's around the time I was getting ready to start working on, I think, the Gray chapter. And a lot of the stuff from the Gray chapter came because I had shut my brain off from that world so much that I was able to come home and literally, like, within 1 month, come up with 18 arrangements without even really thinking about them or putting too much thought into them. I wouldn't necessarily say it was a flow state, but it was probably the next best thing to a flow state. So motorcycle riding is definitely tantamount to that. And I just realized as I'm saying this, I haven't done a proper ride. And it seems like it's been years because we've been touring so much. I got to go on a little ride in Australia on a day off with some of the like Australia Harley reps and shit like that. But I think it's time for another long motorcycle trip.
You should do it, man.
Yeah, I know guys like Neil Peart, they're really into it. Some of the other dudes like I met like Ricky Rackman rides for, there's dudes in the music industry that ride, and I think probably for similar reasons. It's an escape without like completely shutting yourself off. Duff McKagan rides.
I know Wesley Schultz from the Lumineers. He finds inspiration riding, and like lyrics will come to him in his head, and he'll pull over on the side of the road and jot them down.
That's cool.
Like singing in his helmet, just like singing, and these lyrics just come to him, and he's like, "Oh, I got to write this down," which is it's cool because it just gets you into a different space where you remove all the outside noise. You're focused on what you're doing, but it allows your mind to kind of wander. And
it's really perfect, man. I don't understand why more people don't get into the whole motorcycle thing. I mean, I get it from like a safety standpoint, because now every day, you're riding out there, you pass a car and they're just like, their nose is buried on their phone and they're not even paying attention. And it sucks. But I mean, if we could live in a culture where you didn't have to worry about that so much, I've heard, and I haven't really like been up on this too much. I don't really get into the whole business side of things, but like the whole motorcycle market is like down overall just because the younger, like Zoomers and, anybody like under millennial, they're just not into it. And I'm not trying to figure it out. It's got to be a symptom of smart devices and the way the culture is going and the way we live as humans, where we don't have to go outside to go grocery shopping or to do this or to do that anymore. Or maybe there wasn't a father figure or an uncle to pass that passion for the sport down, to the younger child. But it's really a shame. And I don't know what the code is, if there is a code to crack to get these younger kids into wanting to have that freedom and experience it.
Such a positive thing. Like, you talk about like not only finding this creative inspiration in this flow state, but you also talk a little bit about like the grind of this like music process and like the album cycle. And your life is literally writing, recording, touring. You're never home. You're always working. Like, it would be so easy to get burnt out. And I'm sure you get there from time to time.
Oh yeah.
Does motorcycle maybe help you with that? Like
100%
to alleviate some of that?
100%. And I used to want to take a motorcycle on the road with me. I was doing a record with Stone Sour in Tennessee, Nashville, and Rush was working there too. So I got to meet Neil Peart. and talk to him. And, that dude rides. He was one of those BMW guys. You know what I mean? So those guys ride.
Everywhere.
They're like gold wing dudes. They're just,
Putting in miles.
they're on a bike and they're never off of it. But he would do that on tour. He found a way to bring that into his, touring repertoire, which I always thought would be really cool to do. But it's like, man, riding can be a strenuous activity, and I have to save most of my energy for what it is we do on stage. Do I want to try to like figure out how to do that? Maybe someday I'll try it. I don't know. I don't know how well that would work out though. I know Sid talked about wanting to bring bikes out. He rides too. So
I feel like touring is like so exhausting in itself that it's like you
it
almost don't
is.
have any extra energy to do anything.
It's
But
just the traveling, man. Like that's what I think Eddie Vedder said it. And if it wasn't Eddie Vedder, it was somebody like similar, like that toured for a living. It's like, we're not getting paid as musicians to play the show. We're getting paid for all the travel we have to do, all the sacrifices, if you're lucky, the decent hotel that you get to stay in, but you're sharing buses, you're sharing your entire life. Forget about privacy. It's out the window when you hit the road, and it's done, and it's not always fun. And your sleep schedule's out the window. There's no circadian rhythm. Your sleep schedule's fucked.
yeah,
Your
that's
diet's
real, man.
fucked. Everything's
that's real.
fucked,
Dude, being on the road's hard to maintain any level of health. It's tough.
It is.
After spending most of your entire life dedicated to something, what does that kind of commitment teach you?
This is the longest I've been committed to one thing ever in my life. I tend to be a pretty like non-committal type of person, but I've been in Slipknot. I've been in the music business longer than I did any school, longer than any relationship I've had. I'm talking like, like romantic relationship, not like friendships. I've got friendships, since, dating back to junior high school. But this is the longest time I've seen any kind of like project or hobby or interest that I've had. I don't want to say seeing it through because I don't know if it's been seen through yet.
It's a process.
It is definitely a process. It's like sort of teaching me the endurance, the way to sort of like keep the endurance in it. So you have to constantly keep finding your passion for it, and the minute you lose your passion for it, that's the minute it's not worth doing anymore.
It's kind of like investing. It's like compound interest,
Yeah.
you stick with something long enough and it just becomes better and better
Yeah.
and more meaningful.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy, but like,
And it's got to be meaningful. It's got to be a purpose. It can't just be for a paycheck. If it's for a paycheck, forget it. Pack it in. Stop.
dude, if you guys ever were in this for the paycheck, you would have never found the success that you found.
We never put it.
Because the magic of what you do and why people resonate with it is the soul.
Yeah.
And like you can feel the energy in the music, and it wouldn't be real if it was for the money.
Well,
the money is a side effect of the passion.
If the money will come if you have the passion and you have, the work ethic and you stick to your guns and you do what it is you love to do. You don't have to worry about money. Money will come,
After everything you've been through with the band and outside of the band and ups and downs and accomplishments, what do you feel like you're still trying to figure out? Because I feel like you've learned a lot along the way. Like you mentioned, you're getting a little bit older and you've had a lot of experience, but what is it that you're still trying to figure out?
I'm trying to figure me out, I said, I'm a Libra. I can never make up my mind. I'm so indecisive about everything. I'm a fence rider. I'm getting a lot better at it. You know what I mean? I'm getting a lot better at figuring out what it is that I don't want, which, obviously helps you get to what are the things that you do want. But, for me, it's, I don't know, man. It's learning myself, learning what it is that's truly the motivating factor, and learning it what it is day to day that gives me the will to want to get out of bed, because there are days where, I get a lot of what's the fucking point? You know what I mean? So, there's a lot of that. I used to be a thing that I used to think of random things that pop in your head for random reasons. It's like, what is a guy about, I don't know, like Rick Springfield, for whatever reason, thinking of him. So he had, his career doing soap operas and his musical career in the 80s, and then that went away. But what's a day in the life of Rick Springfield like? What do these guys do that, maybe their career's over, or maybe they're on a hiatus from their career? What is, from the time they wake up until the time they go to bed, how do they occupy their time? Do they wake up, go to the gym? Do they have children? Are they dropping them off at school? Are they you know what I mean? I'm still single. Yeah, I have a girlfriend. I'm not planning on getting married anytime soon. I'd like to have children at some point, but I put off having children because this came first. I had to give 100% to this. Plus I saw what this lifestyle does to families. It's not healthy. And if you're a really strong family, you can keep it together, but it's hard on it. And I didn't want to put another human through that.
There's a lot of sacrifice that goes into doing something great.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who become the best at what they do, it comes at the sacrifice of everything else.
Pretty much. Yeah. And that kind of goes back to that sort of monk sort of thing, because that's what they do. They meditate on themselves, and, they got the vow of celibacy, and they don't really interact with many other humans, and they don't communicate,
It's like the samurai or the Jedi, or name your master of your craft.
Yep.
That comes at the cost of everything else.
It really does. It really does. And it's a shame, because other people can suffer for it. And that's, I struggle with that a lot too, because in some ways it can seem extremely selfish, and maybe it is extremely selfish, but at the same time, it's, wouldn't it be dishonest if it was, you know what I mean? If it was to be the other way around,
And also, how could you pass up on this opportunity to live this life that you're living?
I couldn't have done it. My grandfather on my mom's side passed away quite a few years ago, but he would talk to me after I'd come home from tours, and, they were real big, they're Southern. They're real big into got to go to school, got to get that scholarship. You got to get that career. You got to have them bennies. You got to get them benefits. You know what I mean? That's where they thought, I should be going. And I just wasn't cut out for that. But I'd talk to my grandpa, step grandpa, but love him to death. He was my grandpa. And I'd talk to him about, seeing the Duomo in Milan, going to the places that we've been to, Trafalgar Square, Berlin, just the travel in Japan, Osaka, Tokyo, Australia. And he said to me, he's like, well, James Donald, looks like you got an education after all. And that hit me pretty hard. You know what I mean?
I mean, travel and experience is better than any education you could
have.
It
is, because you get to meet people, and you get to meet people from other cultures, and you get to not necessarily pick their brain, but you get to see why they think and how they function the way they function. And, things are regional, and, different governments have different ways of ruling their people or running their society. And that has an effect. I mean, you can communicate to other people about that and how it works for them or how it doesn't work for them. It's really wild. You can learn a lot from other people just by having a conversation.
What does the best version of this next chapter look like for you?
Being able to manifest the things that I've been trying to manifest probably over the past 10 years, which are in some ways coming to life. You have to be realistic about certain things, but in my perfect world, I'm going to have a big giant acreage that I can disappear onto and be creative and write music every day. And when I'm not writing music, I can go explore, you know what I mean? Explore and hike and do the things that I want to do. Keep my, you know, my mind and my body into a good rhythm and a good healthy state enough to come back to a really creative, beautiful place that I've made, not just for myself, but for the band, for Slipknot. And if Slipknot never decides to come there to be creative, maybe other people will, you know?
I like it. Well, dude, I appreciate your time. If or I guess when I am passing through Arizona and I have my dirt bike, I might have to come.
Dude, hit me up.
I might have to come by and like
I've
see
got,
some of the trails and
I've got
riding
tons
around.
of spare bedrooms. I've got,
Yeah.
I just
My
bought-
parents live in Sedona, so not too
Oh,
far.
sweet. Yeah, we did a loop up to Sedona. Eddie and I did. And
Sick.
It's a pretty quick loop. It's not too far. It's beautiful up there too. Absolutely. Arizona's a really beautiful state, you know. But yeah, man, tons of spare bedrooms. I got a place if you want to hook the trailer up.
Likewise,
you know.
when you're here in Florida, if you're ever just like bored, which you probably never are, but you want to get out on the bikes, hit me up. I'm right down the road.
Awesome.
Go ride.
We ride down to my girlfriend likes to go down to shit, I forgot the name of it. There's a little biker bar down by
Earl's.
Earl's.
Yeah.
We ride down to Earl's for pizza all the time.
Dude.
You know what I mean?
Hell yeah. That's awesome. Thanks, brother. I
Cheers,
appreciate
man.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah. We'll see you around.
I got my first set of Fox gear back in 1998. I wore that jersey to school almost every day, not just because it looked cool, but because it meant something to me. That Fox head was more than a logo. It was an identity, a symbol of the sport I love. And all these years later, I'm still wearing Fox. And it still means just as much. For over 50 years, Fox Racing has been chasing the edge, pushing what's possible in moto gear. From past legends to current stars and the next generation of champions, Fox has never stopped evolving. But through it all, the mission has always stayed the same: build the most advanced moto gear on the planet. I've been part of this journey since I was a kid, and I'm still proud to fly the Fox head. Explore the latest gear, including the new Danger collection by Hayden Deegan, available now at foxracing.com.